Dutch Martin. Darren Dutch Martin is the advisory board member of the African American-based leadership network Project 21, holds a BA from Boston University, MS from Carnegie Mellon University, and he is a writer as well, and he's written a piece, I believe it's up at nationalcenter.org, but it's about the Netflix series called Dear White People. And because it seems... well, wrong, to say the least. But good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. I have to wonder, Dear White People, for those folks who don't know what it's about, give us the backstory on it, on what Dear White People's all about.
Well, the setting takes place at an Ivy League, a fictional Ivy League college or university. Mm-hmm. And apparently a white fraternity has a party where they're dressing in blackface. And of course, you know, this is viewed as offensive by the African-American students at the school, and so they pin this whole Dear White People thing in an attempt to shame all white people. Now, the premise is flawed on a couple of levels. Number one, if you're an African-American or minority student at an Ivy League college or university, I hardly will call you a victim of anything. Secondly, it's kind of disingenuous and unfair to paint an entire race of people, in this case, white people, with the same brush just because of the actions of a group of, knucklehead frat boys.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Why not focus on the actions of those frat boys and not try to hold all white people accountable just for the actions of a few immature idiots?
No, in other words, why not judge people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, to quote somebody famous whose name escapes me right now?
That's right. His name was, his first name is my last name, Martin. Yeah, MLK. Exactly. But you know what? This is just another effort by liberal Hollywood to squeeze as much liberal white guilt out of white America as they can, because for years that sort of paradigm was successful politically and commercially, but now people are getting sick and tired of it. I mean, even African Americans such as myself are getting sick and tired of it. I mean, it's an old, tired horse that needs to be put away.
So you hate horses and you believe in euthanizing animals, because that's how PC we've gotten in this country. Is you got to measure every word, Dutch. Be careful, because the animal lovers will be after you. And by the way, you better be. First of all, we got a guy who's an African American who may be conservative. So quickly, everyone to your safe zones. Everyone to your safe zones, please.
Exactly.
I never knew this till it might have been you that told me this, because I know you. I've had you on. I believe I had you on one time before, a couple of years ago. And I think you were the one that told me this, that BET, the Black Entertainment Channel, is owned by white people now.
That is correct. It was bought by a white-owned conglomerate, sold by its founder, and make that make sense.
Well, why? I don't understand it. I mean, I could understand to a point. I mean, first of all, the slavery was a huge. When I talk about slavery, I say there's a reason why you should never. I know they say that we wouldn't have founded the country; it never would have gotten started. But if you want to have an argument for not compromising your principles, there's one the Founding Fathers never should have compromised on, because it's led to everything else thereafter, and we've all paid a price. That said, the whites fought the Civil War. It was to save the Union before it was to free the slaves. People think the Civil War was about slavery. Not initially. Well, it was, but initially it was about preserving the Union. And whites, though, fought to free the slaves. Quakers were white. Think about the white people that stood up for black people over the years, and black people that did great things for white people. I don't understand why this generation, my generation, and generations hereafter should be punished for something that was done now back in 17 whatever, where they decided it. It was before the actual signing of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. They decided that, whatever year that was decided. I don't remember, 1775 or whatever year it was decided they were going to allow slavery. But bottom line is, why are we still paying the price, and why is that still used as a divisive tool? And I also don't understand either why so many blacks want, like you see more and more college campuses, blacks want their own area. So now they want segregation. It's just crazy.
You know why? Because, we live in a time right now where it pays to be a victim. And although hopefully that era is eroding. I mean, look, I'll tell you my upbringing, okay? I'm the youngest of 6 children. I grew up in a fatherless, female-headed, single-parent household. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, almost 30 years old, that I found out that I'm actually the product of an extramarital affair that my mother committed when she was married to my older sibling's father. I didn't find that out until 5 years after my mother was dead. But do you see me playing the victim? Do you see me blaming Whitey for all of this? No. You know why? Because I have much better and more important things to do with my time, i.e. make something of myself, take advantage of the opportunities that this great country has to make something of myself, regardless of your income, regardless of your background or circumstances. You see, like I said, hard work is hard. Sacrifice, putting your nose to the grindstone, plowing your trade, trying to achieve your goals, that's hard work. But, playing the victim, blaming the white man, and blaming a legacy of slavery and all that other nonsense, well, that's easy. It makes people who do it feel good about themselves, and it makes, racially guilty white people, it gives them an out to try to assuage their guilt over slavery, and never mind the fact that over 80% of white Americans today are not the descendants of slaveholders. And if they were, so what?
And by the way, I don't know if it's I've heard this story more than once, and it's been repeated. I never, quite honestly, did the research on it. I've never snopes the articles I've read on it, and I'm just going to ask you if you know. First of all, I do know this part, that it was blacks in Africa who sold other blacks into slavery. But I'm told this next part, I've never researched, that it was the first slave owner in America was black.
Yes, his name was Anthony Johnson.
So that's true.
That is correct. Yes. And I mean, people, regarding the epic miniseries of the 1970s Roots, people love to remember the first, the last 95% of that series, but the first 5%, the first 15, 20 minutes of that miniseries, guess what? Kunta Kinte was trapped and kidnapped by African slave traders and sold into slavery by those same African slave traders. I mean, you bring up an excellent point. Nobody wants to mention that. Also, slavery existed in every inhabited part of the globe, for centuries, even during biblical times. It had nothing to do with race. It had everything to do with people who were in power taking advantage of people who had no power.
It's interesting you even say that, because slavery still exists today when we don't secure our borders. But it's not just our borders, our porous borders where there's stealing kids. But I've all over the world. I just had a woman on last week who was talking about the slave trading and sex slaves. And it's like 3 to 4 million, I think, people a year are in sex trade. So the slavery's still going on, and it would be much better to focus your energies on those people. The current, the present, not the past.
Of course it would. But again, that defeats the race-baiting narrative of the day. It doesn't serve Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton any useful purpose, and it won't put money in their pocket, nor will it get them any airtime on TV.
Well, let me ask you this. So I could understand, though, if a black person was upset. I mean, it's great. You have a great attitude. I think of Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell and whoever, Alan West or Ben Carson, and the list could go on of successful black people just recently, and certainly over the years. I mean, that were successful people that are black, and they don't seem to have a chip on their shoulder. But I don't understand what gain do white people who own BET have? What are they getting out of this?
Yeah, you know what? You'll have to ask them. I honestly don't know what they get out of it. My thing is, I think it's a racial guilt thing. I've come across many whites who feel that, they have to atone in some form or fashion for what happened to my ancestors, and I try to tell them, no, you don't. You don't owe you, white person, do not owe me, a black person, anything. Okay? I mean, your ancestors, 9 times out of 10, did not enslave my ancestors, and guess what? Even if they did, you weren't around back then. You had nothing to do with it. So why should I blame you or hold you morally or otherwise responsible for that? Get over it. Let's work together. It's a new day, a new era. Let's work together as Americans to tackle the problems that we're facing today. And specifically in terms of the African American community, I need to put them on blast, okay? All of this time they're focusing on white guilt and slavery and dear white people. They need to be focusing on the fact that 75% of black children in America are born out of wedlock. And over 60% of those black children are raised in female-headed, single-parent households where their black mother has multiple children by multiple men. Okay? You can find the source of that disintegration of the two-parent black family to LBJ's expansion of welfare as part of his Great Society programs. But again, excuse me, then you'll have to say, well, wait a minute. LBJ was a Democrat. And, most black people vote Democrat. So, they don't want to make that distinction or, connect those dots. Because, if you're a pro-black person, you automatically, vote for the Democratic Party, you vote for Hillary, even though from the time emancipation was ended, or even before, every piece of civil rights legislation that was put forth in Congress was voted down by the Democratic Party and voted for by the Republican Party. And it was the Republican Party that was primarily responsible for ending slavery and putting forth the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, et cetera, et cetera. But common sense, logic, and fact trumps histrionics and the race pimp narrative.
Yeah, the divide and conquer, or the making money off of race, because there's a lot of money to be made. In fact, it's so funny. Ben Carson, I think he was still as a candidate, but he gave a speech where, and actually, you know what? Forget he gave a speech. He was going to be up at Penn's Peak here, and I had him on the show. And he actually went through the history of blacks in America after slavery. And he went through their success rate, and the numbers were amazing for blacks achieving the number of black black families were thriving. They were flourishing. There were a lot of the divorce rate for blacks was less per capita than it was for whites. Success and achievement in college, high schools, all that. Blacks were flourishing up until obviously there was the South and all that nonsense, and still the hatred. But as far as their achievement, the black family was intact, and blacks were achieving until the Lyndon Johnson's programs. And Ben Carson rattled off all kinds of statistics there, and it's kind of interesting. You would almost think, when you think about the Democrats believing in Margaret Sanger and the party of eugenics, and and she was also anti-black, you'd almost think they did it on purpose to blow up the black family and their success. But either way, whether it was by accident or design, they've certainly, in a different way, enslaved blacks today.
And that's exactly right. But again, when you put forth such facts to the pro-blacks and the liberals, it causes their heads to explode. I mean, as a black conservative, all I have to do is mention any number of the facts that you just mentioned to a bunch of liberal blacks, including members of my own family, and instead of trying to argue with me on the merits, I'm automatically called a sellout, race traitor, coon, Uncle Tom. I'm told that if my mother were still alive, she'd be disappointed in me, etc., etc. They can't argue facts because they don't have the facts on their side, and they know it.
Yeah, they don't. Again, I'm talking to Darren Dutch Martin on the advisory board of what's called the African American Leadership Network. Project 21 has his BA from Boston University, MS from Carnegie Mellon, nationalcenter.org, nationalcenter.org. Dutch, where can they find out more about you specifically and read your stuff? I'm up here at the nationalcenter.org website. Is that, and I can see all these different links to your articles. Is that the best way for them to read your stuff?
Yeah, that's the best way, nationalcenter.org. And, for immediate inquiries, just contact the National Center.
How did you come to where you are? How did you come to not have a chip on your shoulder? Was there somebody in your life that influenced you? What made you come to the conclusion you did?
Well, you know what? I'm a dark-skinned black guy, and growing up, I was always ridiculed and ostracized by other black people, kids and adults, for being dark-skinned, for speaking correct English, for having a sincere love of learning, for doing well in school, being academically conscientious. And so for the longest time, I just couldn't understand that, what I was going through, despite the fact that whatever little racism or discrimination that I experienced never prevented me from, graduating from high school, from getting a part-time job when I was in college, or from graduating from college or grad school. It wasn't until I read John McWhorter's book, Losing the Race, in 2000, Losing the Race, Self-Sabotage in Black America, that the light bulb went off. That is a phenomenal book. I wrote a piece on it. You can check the website, nationalcenter.org. I wrote a piece on it some years ago. It's still on the website, entitled How Losing the Race Changed My Life. That book really opened my eyes to this dichotomy in the black community, and it definitely pushed my political worldview to the right.
Losing the Race, who's the author?
John McWhorter, capital MC, capital WHORTER. He's a linguist by trade. Now, he's been with the Manhattan Institute for a number of years. At the time he wrote the book, he was a linguistics professor at Stanford University. But that book has really stood the test of time. By
John McWhorter, McWhorter?
Correct.
Great. I'm going to have to check that out, Losing the Race. And again, and Dutch wrote a piece, if you want to kind of read the crib sheet version of the cliff sheet version, I think it's called, Cliff Notes version of it. Check out, go to, again, nationalcenter.org, and then you can find out all the different writers, and you'll just go to his, it says participants, you see him, click on, again, talking to Dutch Martin, Darren Dutch Martin, and you'll see all of his publications up there, and it's still up there on the website. So Netflix, the series Dear White People, just another way for black people and white liberals who finance them to bash white people. That would be your conclusion.
That is correct. I mean, they're trying to squeeze as much juice out of that lemon as they can, because I think deep down they realize that lemon is running dry.
Don't you think they'd want to have the races get along and be doing everything the opposite way? Instead, look, I went to see the movie Hidden Figures, okay? Mm-hmm. Did you see that movie?
No, but I heard it was a great movie.
It is.
And it's based on the fact that, African-American women use their brain power,
yes,
their smarts and intelligence to help put a man on the moon. I'm a firm, supporter of more movies like that being made of African Americans using their smarts, their intelligence, their innate mental ability to make a difference in our society and to change the world.
The most powerful part of that movie, Dutch, is at the end, when you see the pictures of the real women, because you say it's a movie, and you realize it was based on, they say it was based on fact. So you think, oh, yeah, it was based on fact, it's maybe loose. No. They bring up at the end the photos of every woman that's played in that movie, the photos of them when they were young, and the photos of them now. and it just hits you like a ton of bricks that this really happened. They really were good. John Glenn is one who stood up for them, and there are some moments of racism in there. But it doesn't dwell on race. It actually is about blacks rising above, and it's I don't know how to explain it to you, but when you see them having to go to a different restroom, drink out of a different coffee pot, that alone is enough to make you just sick, But it wasn't. The movie was not about that so much as it was about their success in using their brains, and it is a great movie. Yeah, it's a terrific movie. Dutch.
It's a movie I plan on buying and having in my collection.
Yep, we saw it, and I want to buy it I took my granddaughters to it, and I actually want to buy them a copy. They loved it so much they're waiting for it to come out on DVD. It's a great movie. All right, thank you again, Darren Dutch Martin, Project 21. Go to nationalcenter.org. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You too. News Radio 790 WAEB. Let him go.